Why did you connect with California? I mean, you could have gone to an airport and handpicked anywhere in the world and started to some degree again,
right?
But you chose to come here.
For me, honestly, I think like so many of my close friends are here. People from London who've moved here for work and stuff like that. It's like, I'd say since I left home, I've never really had the place that feels like, oh, that's my home. I'd say my house in London is the most homely that I feel anywhere. Just because I've been there the longest. I've been there for like 6 years now. With like all the touring and stuff that we did in the band, I remember there was one point where we'd been away for so long that I came home to my house in England, and I was home for about 5 days, and I walked in the door and I sat down and I was like, I don't know what to do like when I'm home at all. I'd been away for so long. I didn't, you know, I hadn't seen my friends for so long. I didn't know who was around. I was kind of like, who do I hang out with?
What is this strange reality? Yeah.
So there was a point, I guess, where I realized I was more comfortable being on the road.
So what'd you do after 5 days? Did you head back off again?
Yeah, and I was like happy to go. I was, you know.
I think it's actually understandable. I think there's something about that kind of gypsy lifestyle, which, in particular, the arts that make you travel, music and such, and the idea of having sort of a desire to be gypsy just by your very nature. They attract one another to some degree. I mean, were you always a little bit kind of adventurous as a kid? Were you looking further afield even when you were growing up?
I don't know if I was really. I had never been to London before I moved there, which is crazy to me to think about it now.
That is crazy.
You know, it's not that far away from where I grew up. It's like a 3-hour drive. But London was like where the rich kids went shopping on the weekend, like with their mum or something, you know? But also everything about it felt like it was like, this is a new challenge. And if it takes me to London, then
the whole thing seemed to me to just be a new challenge. It was crazy watching it kind of from a distance and watching what you and your friends were kind of going through and the whole thing. I mean, I suppose with the benefit of some wisdom and some age now looking back on it, you must even have a slightly different perspective than when it first ended in 2015. It's been 4 years and just kind of thinking what happened.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy now because there'll be times where people will remind me of stuff that happened that I forgot about. And you like relive it all over again. You're kind of like, oh yeah, that was cool too. You know, the first 2 years you don't even feel like you're working at all because you're just so happy to not be going to school, and it's like, I get to do this, great, okay. And you kind of go from also like, you know, when you're a kid and you see a T-shirt that you want and you like save up the exact amount.
Yeah.
But you'd have to account for like the postage and packaging, so you'd actually have to like save up for this amount. You know, you're kind of like doing this, and then you move to London and you work doing stuff that's fun, and you're like, can I buy this T-shirt? And someone's like, yeah, if you want. And you're like, okay. And that kind of feels like what life is like.
Yeah, then it just goes from T-shirt to flat, from flat to house to, if, you know, you're lucky enough to have that kind of success. I mean, I'm interested to know 2 memories, and we're not going to stick around here for long because there's so much more to talk about. But while we're here, what was, now you've been away from that experience, what's the strongest prevailing memory you have before One Direction started? Like, what's the sharpest, most vivid memory you have in your mind before your life was tipped upside down? Yeah. Right. Before everything changed. Because it was so sudden. I mean, it was over the course of, 10 weeks, and all of a sudden that's it. You're not going home again.
Yeah. I mean, probably like a birthday meal I had with some friends. I used to live next to a Chinese restaurant, and it was like my favorite restaurant. Right? So I used to come home from school every day, and I'd get up to my bedroom, like open the window and stick my head out.
To smell it.
Woo! You know? And that was like where I went for my birthday meals. But I'd say probably the biggest stuff would probably be, there was a river, it's called the River Dane, where, you know, everyone would go down in the summer and you'd buy those little disposable barbecues that you used to take, and someone would be in charge of like buying sausages and someone would have to buy the drinks.
A tin full of barbecues used to put on the beach.
Yeah, and you like put them on the floor and then you try and squeeze like somehow 12 sausages onto this like tiny thing.
Okay, what's the one prevailing memory you have today of that? Was it 4 years?
5.
5 years?
Yeah.
What's one that really jumps out?
One of my favorite memories. I'll give you 2. The first one was when we'd just been formed as a band, there was like a picture of us that had been taken from when we were at the show, like someone's mum had taken it. And it was like the first picture of us as the 5 of us. And we were staying at my stepdad's house. We were like living in this little bungalow, all of us together to like practice, and we were just like singing songs and basically just had a sleepover for like 4 days, and everyone drove down, and there's a tiny little like newsagents down the street, and we'd heard this picture was being put in the paper. So we were like, oh, we're gonna be in the paper. Like, that's crazy. So the 5 of us like left this little bungalow and walked down to the newsagents and got the paper, and then came back and had breakfast, and we're all just like sitting, staring at the paper and like passing around the paper, and we're like, let me see it again, let me see it again. And I don't know, I guess just because we just didn't know what was gonna happen.
It's a timeless image. That's a timeless image.
We were so happy about it.
That first real piece of like recognition when you realize that it's not a controlled environment anymore, like people that you don't know down the street can actually take a look at you or hear you, that's still, without a doubt, a life-changing moment for every artist I've ever spoken to.
Yeah, because it only happens one time too.
Oh, after that, everything kind of changes.
Yeah, because we were watching X Factor at my family. We were at my cousin's house the day that my audition went on air, and you know, we watched it and we're like, oh my god, that's crazy. And then we're driving home and we go to a petrol station to stop off and fill up. I'm in the petrol station and this guy goes, were you just on X Factor? And I was like, yes, I was. But yeah, I'd say that. And then the other one, I guess, once the band had really started, was we were in Sweden recording What Makes You Beautiful in the studio. Someone came up into the room and was like, there's 2 girls outside. And we were like, why? And they're like, looking for you. And we were all just like, but we're in Sweden, you know? So that was like another...
It's super innocent.
Same, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean...
That was kind of thing like, oh my God, that's so crazy. Like, we're in Sweden. How, you know?
Fast forward to the end of it, and you are out here a few months afterwards, and like that decompression leading into the writing of the first album, right? Leading into your self-titled album. That idea of having some independence for the first time, really to kind of do whatever you want. How did that feel?
Pretty amazing, actually. I didn't really have a plan for like when I wanted to make a record. I knew I wanted to start writing at some point. And that's kind of why I came out here, and I started with Kid Harpoon. So Sweet Creature was the first song we did. That was like in my first writing sessions when I kind of started like, because up until that point I'd done a lot of sessions with different people, and I tried to write with as many different people as possible just to feel like, just to like learn. I just wanted to learn. It was like, the best way I've ever heard songwriting described is like, it's kind of like surfing in that you can practice getting up on the board as much as you want, and sometimes the wave just doesn't come. Or the wave comes, but you haven't practiced getting up on the board enough. Every now and again, you've practiced enough and the wave comes, and that's when you write the song.
That's when it comes through. That's when the music, everything's in the right place.
So I kind of always wanted to be prepared to stand up on the board whenever the wave came.
Do you surf?
Not enough. I wish I surfed more. The waves out here are really intense. And I think the last time I surfed was here, and I got absolutely beaten up. I kept like flipping. It was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good look until you get in the water and you realize that you're a little out of your depth, literally. How important was friendship to you when you started out as well? Because you were trying out with, like you say, you were trying lots of different songwriters, but I felt like when the album finally came out, you found a tight group of friends who were more than just collaborators.
I'd say, to finish the thought, when I'd been writing in the band, it was kind of like, if I'd ever written stuff that was just with a friend or something, it was kind of like, well, I'm not going to release any music, but what would it sound like if I was to write a song that was for me?
Was that a contractual thing, or was it just a loyalty to the band thing?
Just didn't really want to.
Yeah.
And definitely didn't have time to.
Yeah, right.
But I knew that, like, maybe one day I'd want to do it, but I wasn't like, I can't wait to get out of this thing so I can go make my own record.
Yeah.
You know?
So did the end of it creep up on you?
A little bit. Well, I wouldn't say crept up. I guess the last year of it, we all kind of knew we were going to stop at the end of that year.
So how do you know? I mean, you know, it's this juggernaut. It's this non-stop.
Well, we would have, like, we'd sit down and have conversations about, like, everyone good, everyone wants to keep going, and that kind of thing. And there was a part of me where I felt like all of the decisions I'd made as an adult that affected my life and what I was doing with my life had been made as a group. And I think there was a part of me that felt like I wanted to make some decisions for myself, where it was like, you never really had to make the decision, because I could put my hat in the ring but still be like, oh, well, majority rules and I got outvoted. I felt like I need to make some decisions that just affect me.
You know, Zane already did that, and he bounced out mid-tour, and I think it was pretty amazing you guys saw that tour through for fans. I think there's probably a wobbly 24 hours for people where they thought, well, that's going to start something.
Right.
But looking back on it now, like, how challenging was that to complete that tour and to see that through, and how, you know, how impactful was that decision for him to not see it through to the end?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard, you know. Part of it was, it was kind of like, we were sad, obviously, that someone had left, but also sad that he was not enjoying it so much that he had to leave. Because I think at the time, too, the tour and everything was going so well, and everyone had kind of got to this place where everyone was kind of living in a way where they, I think, felt pretty good while touring.
Enjoy it. Yeah.
It felt like everyone was kind of enjoying it, and I'd say a big part of it was us kind of being like, wow, we didn't realize he wasn't enjoying it that much, you know. You know, obviously there was big moments for us where we were like, what we do it, you know, because we were about to start recording a new album and stuff, and it was like, are we recording this without him? But I'd say in the moment, I guess the four of us became closer, because we were like, okay, this is a hurdle that we weren't expecting. And I think you deal with this in many different places when you're with, like, traveling and touring, and it's a demanding thing, and not everyone likes doing it. But it's kind of like, if someone's not enjoying it, you'd rather they don't do it.
That's why contracts are strange to me. Like, I understand there's a desire to do them when there's a lot of money involved, and in particular when there are certain businesses that really work, but in the arts and things that are creative, like, I never understand of keeping people against their will. Like, you're not going to get good work out of it.
I never get that with, like, the record deal stuff, where it's like, why would you like when people, like, won't release people from contracts and stuff? It's like, why would you want a begrudged
employee in the creative space?
Like, an artist
I don't get
to
it.
make stuff for you when they don't want to make stuff? It seems like completely counterproductive to me. But I mean,
you know,
I'm also not a businessman, so.
You're doing all right in that department, though, so you've got some good instincts. You know, you hire well.
I don't know, maybe. I'd say my gut is the only thing that I do trust in terms of people.
That's really important, right? I mean, there's only two rules you should really live by: instinct and diligence, right? One gets you into the room. The second one makes you double check and make sure you should stay there.
I can also tell, because the times where I've ever been, like, really, really upset by people is when I'm more upset with myself when I've got it wrong.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I feel like I'm a pretty good judge of character. And that's the only time I feel myself get really upset with stuff like that, is where you're like, oh, I trust this person, or, you know, I feel like they're a good thing, and then it goes the other way and you're kind of like, I got that wrong. And then I end up like really bummed out about it for a while. But,
that's classic hard on yourself syndrome, to be honest with you, you know, taking other people's bullshittery and blaming yourself for it. That's therapy 101. Therapy 101. Have you tried that, therapy? I love it.
Yeah, I have, actually, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I think for a really long time, especially when I started coming to California, there was a big thing for me where I felt like everyone went to therapy.
They do.
Right, and I think for a long time I was like, I don't need that. You know, it's very like British way of looking at it, I think. And then I think there was a point where I kind of was trying to work out a lot more stuff about myself, because obviously then it was just me working.
On your own, yeah.
And I think it kind of comes with, when you're trying to make music, it's so navel-gazing. You're just like making an album, I feel like, is the most self-indulgent time you can think of, really, because you're just like,
oh, if you didn't have the opportunity to share it, if you didn't actually finish and share it with us, it would be narcissism of the most epic order.
Can you imagine you just make like an album to yourself and then you don't release it?
It's therapy, I suppose, in a weird way. But then we get the trade. That's what we get, is we get the trade on it. We get all that kind of navel-gazing, as you put it, and that self-reflection somehow forms this magic shape that we get to apply to our own lives. And then we become narcissistic because we say, well, Harry's speaking to me.
Right.
So I get to apply it to my life, right?
But yeah, I think with the therapy thing, I just realized I was just getting in my own way. You know, it's been a thing where I've definitely felt it have an impact on my life, and something that I've kind of introduced some friends to who were going through stuff, and they were very skeptical about it.
I would assume you're a good friend, you're a loyal person.
Try to be.
Yeah. So who are some of your best friends? Who are the people that help you through these times, that are some of the people that you know really, that you're close to?
I'm pretty lucky, actually, with that stuff, because, and it's probably why I didn't go to therapy earlier, is because I have those friends where I'll have the same conversation that I would have with a therapist. I was at this talk thing where Alan de Botton was talking, and he was talking about how, like, real friendship is just built on vulnerability. The second you open up to someone with, like, a real thing is when you actually get to know someone. So I definitely got, if there was someone that I was friends with and I felt like, oh, I want to be, like, close to them, just open up really kind of straight away. And doing that has definitely caused me to become much closer with, like, just people, just all of my friends in general, I'd say.
How did you feel about when you started on this new album, Run and Fine Line? Had your opinion changed about your self-titled debut? Were there things that you felt in the heat of the moment, in the process of coming out of One Direction and making a solo record, that you would do differently, or that you felt that album didn't quite achieve?
When I listen to the first album now, I can hear all of the places where I feel like I was playing it safe, because I just didn't want to get it wrong. I just didn't want to get it wrong.
You started with a mid-tempo 7-minute single, bro. Right. I mean, it wasn't that safe, to be fair.
Yeah. Apart from that.
Carry on.
But I guess a big part of going into this album was I spent a lot of time kind of thinking about the whole process of, you make an album, then you put it out, and you know, kind of release it, and then you tour it, and all of the bits that I didn't enjoy as much, I kind of went into the second one feeling like I want to work out how to make all of this feel really fun.
So that's why you drank margaritas and did mushrooms.
Yeah, I guess. I think it was kind of like...
out to Malibu.
I had this moment where I was like, I would rather not do it than do it and it not be fun. Making this album was all about freedom.
Yeah, of course, sounds it.
I had a big moment of, I guess through the whole making of this record, I was kind of trying to redefine what success meant to me. for so long, especially in the band, it was like every album got bigger and every tour got bigger, and it was like always growing. And I think when I went to make the first record, it was kind of freeing because I felt like, well, I don't have to do this anymore. You're still like, well, if the last band thing was this and then your first thing is
everyone's
this,
lined up to judge. Everyone is lined up to judge. Like you come out with that first album and it doesn't smash it. It's like, oh, well, I guess out of the band, it's a no-go, right?
Right.
And so for me, when that album came out, I felt that you already were kind of redefining success in your own terms because you went and connected with your audience, it felt to me at least, like in a very real way. Like you went back to trying to really connect with people. Right. You can't connect in a baseball stadium.
Right. That was a thing that I'd always said I wanted to do when we kind of started and when we started doing the music. It was like, I kind of said to my manager, like the first tour that I do, I want it to be really small. And then I guess with this one, it was like, I just wanted to have fun. I just wanted to have so much fun.
That's what success is. That's where you landed on the redefinition of success.
Yeah, and one of my friends kind of said, if you're happy doing what you're doing, then nobody can tell you're not successful. I mean, it's so obvious, but it's also the kind of thing where probably 4 years ago, if someone had said that to me, I'd be like, okay.
No, because you were too busy making everybody else happy.
And also, I guess, when I was in the band, there was a big thing of, because we would make, the last 3 records we made on the road, and I had friends who were musicians who I knew would they would tour, and then they would take 6 months off to go and make a record.
Into a process.
And I used to be like, oh my God.
You can do that?
What, so you're just making, that's it? That's all you're doing.
You're
right
in
now.
room 1607.
You're just making
at the Marriott in Hong Kong, trying to nail a vocal.
4 mattresses and one over the top. Yeah, exactly. On the last 2 tours as well, we bought this old surveillance van and converted it into a studio so it would follow the tour around. So at the venue, you'd go into this tiny little surveillance van that had no air conditioning.
What, you and One Direction would go in the back, we recorded songs in the back of a van on the road.
So we had
That's
this,
the bossiest shit.
Yeah.
So people are walking past the van, they've got no idea.
Well, it'd be in the venue.
In the venue, right, okay. Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's fun to record it like that. It's just a totally different process.
The album starts with Golden, which is you said before, that vulnerability is the way to great friendship, and I feel like that song establishes that. I mean, there's a lot of I know you're scared, but man, I'm just gonna tell you the truth. I feel like that's what that song is about. It's kind of, and it sets the stall out for the album too. It's a very personal album.
Golden, we wrote on day 2 of being in Shangri-La. That was kind of and immediately as soon as we'd done it, it was oh, this is track 1.
You knew it.
Right.
I love that feeling. It's one of the best parts of making a record is making the track listing up as you go.
Because I always end up with track 1 and the last track. And then you're okay, let's see what.
So you knew Fine Line would be the last track?
Yeah, as soon as we
Did you know it was the album title as well?
No.
It's such a powerful piece of music. We can skip to the end if you want. That's that is one of my favorite songs of the year. I mean, that's a stunner, man.
Golden came really early, and then I used to drive from here to the studio and listen to it. And it's kind of as soon as we had it, Golden was the perfect PCH song.
Magic.
You know, it's driving down the coast. It was just, that is what the song is for. It feels so Malibu to me, that song.
I heard that the first person you played the full album to was Liam Gallagher. Is that true? Or one of the first people?
Yeah, I guess by accident,
So what happened?
Well, he was in, we were working in a studio in London, and he was we were kind of trying to finish up, and he was in the studio next door. He came in at, I can't remember how it happened, but
you
he kind of just
before.
ended up.
It was the first time.
Yeah, it was the first time. He kind of just ended up in there listening, which was crazy. You know, I was a massive Oasis fan growing up. And then he invited us all over to go listen to his record, and we listened, and we all had fish and chips and talked and stuff, and he's cool.
I'd imagine Watermelon Sugar would have been a standout for him. I don't know why. It just kind of feels like that's his vibe.
That was, I don't even know if yeah, maybe we played in that. But none of that stuff was finished. I don't think they had horns on it yet.
Right.
Lights Up, I don't think was written. Lights Up, Adore You, Treat People, and those 3 I think hadn't been done yet. They were all the last week, basically.
Watermelon Sugar, which at this point is out, and you performed on SNL, and everyone's kind of figured out what it's about. The joys of, mutually appreciated oral pleasure.
Is that what it's about?
Is it?
I don't know.
That's what everyone's saying.
Oh.
Always good to
Crazy.
leave it open to interpretation.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
But it's something that just seems to kind of have followed you around, that idea of you not just being a sex symbol, but that a lot of your music is inspired by this.
So uncomfortable.
Yeah, I reckon. But I actually wanted to ask you a genuinely serious question about that, because people throw it around like it's fodder, but it is actually awkward, right? Like, how do you feel sometimes when people seem very focused on you in that light?
In all honesty, I'd say I try and think about it as little as possible, because it's a very strange, dynamic thing. It's also like a weird thing to think of about yourself.
Totally.
Like, I guess the thing with like sex in general is like, it used to feel so much more taboo for me to even like when we're in the band, like the thought of people thinking that I had sex was like, oh no, that's crazy. Like, what if they know? But it's like,
Yeah.
It's so, even just like coming into this record, I wanted to feel a little less like guarded with stuff. I wanted to feel a lot freer and just more joyful and like honest. And I think a lot of the time with like, when there's like tabloid stuff, for example, of like people breaking up and, it's like, I think people forget that there's like a person who's also broken up with someone, which is sad. Like,
Yeah.
You get sad when you break up with someone.
Yeah. It feels to me, this album in part, and excuse me if I'm being too personal, but based on the music, it feels like a breakup record in some respects. And it's one particular song, like it's a song called Cherry, which is crazy. I mean, cutting right to it, with some real imagery of losing someone to someone else, and there still being that remnant of your relationship moving into a new space, which is right at the core of heartbreak. I mean, that's like one of the most devastating images. If you're lucky enough to get your heart broken, that's one of the most devastating images you can go through. And you're also quite specific, in terms of, it feels to me like it's quite specific in referencing the relationship you've been in.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, it's a weird one for me because I'm always like, I don't like to kind of explain songs or like kind of explain the meaning behind them and stuff like that. But I think with this record, it's so much more open.
Yeah.
That it's like, but you've told us in the,
Yeah.
like it tells you what it is, I think a thing that I like about kind of definitely where this record went, especially compared to the last one, is like when I start making an album, I don't feel like, I'm making an album that I'm going to put out in December of next year. Or it feels like I just start writing some songs so then I can be as honest as possible. And then the time when you get to decide if you think it's too honest is when you're putting it out. And I never want to like trim that stuff down.
So you never thought for one second when you listen back to Cherry later on that we'd be having a conversation or other people would be listening to it, trying to decipher it and how that would make you feel? You felt you wanted to be true to it.
I think I wanted to be true to it. I think the moment that I wrote it, I wanted to be true to the moment that I wrote it and how I was feeling then. And the thing with...
How are you feeling then?
Not great. But I think also in the moment I felt like I was realizing some stuff about, it was all part of like being more open and, not being like, I don't care. It's like, no, like you get petty when something's not going the way that you want. Like you get petty with that stuff. And I think there's something with Cherry where it's like, it's so pathetic, kind of, in a way. The night that I wrote it, we'd been writing for a few weeks and everyone had left the studio. It was me, Tyler, and Sammy, who's our engineer. And we were kind of sitting around talking at like 2 a.m. maybe. And I was saying that I was feeling a lot of pressure because the last record wasn't like a radio record, I felt like a lot of pressure to be making these like big songs. And I was like, I feel like this record has to be really big. So I feel like I need to make certain songs. You know, I have all these ideas about records that I want to make, and I want to make this record in 5 years, and I want to make this record in 10 years, and I want to make like just these ideas for records that I want to make. And we had this conversation, and Tyler just said to me, you just have to make the record that you want to make right now. That's it. There's no like, let me make sure this one's a commercial success so that I can make what I want later down the road. You just have to make the record that you want to make right now.
He's right.
So then we stayed up and wrote Cherry that night. So
you felt bad when you wrote it. How'd you feel when you finished it?
So good. Like I loved it so much.
That's an amazing song.
It.
Who's speaking at the end? What's the vocal at the end that cuts
That
in?
was my ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, so that's interesting, and I think it's super cool that you left that in, obviously, from a sort of imagery point of view, because I love all that stuff. I love hearing things that revolve around music and aren't necessarily just tied to a structure. But the decision to keep, your ex-girlfriend speaking at the end of the song is like so blunt and so straight up. Like, what the was going through your mind? Like, anyone else who's just broken up with someone right now is like, not on your wildest day would I do that.
Yeah, I know. I don't know, I think it was like, because it got added in later on and it felt so part of the song. It just felt like it needed it. We're friends and stuff, so I asked her if it was okay and she was okay with it. And,
what did she think of the song?
I think she liked it.
Come on, man, it's written about it, right? You gotta love that at the end of the day, man. I mean, there's a song called Falling on the record, which the first time I heard it was like everyone was just floored. And it's a real standout, and it's going to become something I think that people will carry with them irrespective of the context of the album. They'll zero in on that song as well in its own way. And Tom was telling me that came super fast.
Mm-hmm. I was going out for dinner, I think, and I was getting picked up from Tom's house. So he came to pick me up, and I was showering, and he was like playing on the piano. And as I came out of the shower, he was playing like the dun 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 dun. I went and stood next to him at the piano, just in a towel, and we just kind of wrote the whole thing. So it was really fast.
How long did it take?
I'd say Falling maybe took like probably 20 minutes.
What? I mean, that's 20 minutes in a towel. That's real friendship.
Yeah.
That's
right.
About 3 days.
He's like, okay, we finished it. Please go put some trousers on.
Put some pants on or something. Yeah. That's one of those moments, right, where the surfing analogy, where the wave and the practice all comes together. Where do you think that came from, the subject matter, if it came so quick? What do you think you were saying in that song, listening back to it now?
I think it was like, for me, what I hadn't really experienced before was during the making of this record, the times when I felt good and I felt happy were like the happiest I've ever felt in my life. And the times when I felt sad was like the lowest I ever felt in my life. And I think it was kind of that feeling of when you can feel yourself kind of falling back into one of those moments where you're there. And the chorus says like, what am I now? Am I someone I don't want around? It was kind of like...
Yeah, it's powerful. It's super self-absorbed and self-indulgent in a sort of like self-hating kind of way.
Kind of. I guess it was a big moment where I was kind of asking myself like, who am I? Like, what am I doing? Yeah. Kind of.
And there's imagery in there of being too drunk and wandering hands and all that stuff, that all the guilt points.
Yeah.
Along
and just
the way.
like, I kind of started to feel like threads of, where I could see myself becoming someone that I didn't want to be. And that was really hard. But I think that the thing that's nice with that is you get to write a song about it and be like, okay,
next.
And
who helps you at those moments? Does your mum still play a really important role? Your family? And by the way, you don't have to be you.
Right.
There are people doing all kinds of things in all walks of life who are losing their way and need people to bring them back into line. So let's just talk about that relationship for a second, because I know family's a big thing for you.
I'm so lucky with my family. They've always just been really supportive, and that's kind of all you can ask for with like doing this. Is obviously, sometimes you don't want to go home and be like, I'm miserable right now, because you want to be like, no, I'm fine, don't worry about me. And that happens too, but also have the relationship with my family where if I need to have that conversation, I can.
What's the best bit of advice your mum's given you?
The thing with my mum is she's less of like a soundbite of advice. She's like the kindest woman I know, you know? So for me, it's always been like just watching her, how she is with people and stuff is like, I just don't think she has like a bad bone, which is an incredible thing to grow up around. To have that person like supporting you is, it's amazing. She's the best. She's like actually the best. So.
Who do you miss the most? Who do you wish was still around?
Probably my stepdad. Stepdad passed away a couple of years ago.
That's tough.
He was pretty great. He was like a pretty great guy.
Yeah. And what have you learned sort of going through life now as you're kind of experiencing loss? Because we all have to cross that bridge, and that's kind of sobering. And then that's when adulthood's really knocking on your door and you start to really take advantage of and reprioritize things. And, you know, coming out the other end of that really, really high octane, visceral childhood that you had into your 20s and getting into your second album and being an independent human being who's got a strong relationship with your family, like, how have your priorities shifted and what are the things that really come into focus for you now?
Friendships are probably just the most important thing to me. Like the people who I'm really close with are just, I'd say, way more important to me than anything else. I've definitely felt a difference in the conversations that I have with friends. I guess since you like experience death more. When you're a kid and you lose a grandparent or something.
Yeah.
And it's really sad, but also it's like, oh, grandparents are the people who die first.
There's some natural order to that.
Yeah, and I think like the first time you lose like a friend is when you really feel like an adult. You're kind of like, wow.
It's because it's one of the first experiences you have, I think, where you lose control, completely lose control.
You know, I think you have those moments where, and every single person does it who's ever lost a friend, where, you know, whether you're close to them or not, I think everyone has that thing of like, I wish I'd just asked one more time if they were okay, you know? And if there's any positive thing that could possibly come out of that, it's that now the conversations that I have with friends about that stuff is way different in terms of like, you know, you ask a friend if they're okay and it's like, yeah, I'm good. And you're like, I'm like more prepared to have that like, no, but, you know,
give me the real stuff.
Actually okay.
Give me the real stuff.
You know, and that's like their conversations that I have with my friends now.
And you're equally vulnerable in your own way. And you're able to give
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a really important thing. And that obviously, like I said earlier, is where like real friendship comes from. And I don't think everyone's lucky enough to have it, and I don't think it happens all the time.
So interesting that, you know, you came out of this experience, which has left so many people isolated and fearful and paranoid and not wanting to connect with human spirit because they've had non-stop human spirit surrounding them for years, right? And you're like so different. It's like you just kind of called time on it and then just went searching for real human experience almost immediately. You know, you came to California in the search for people and for experience and for relationships.
I mean, the thing with my relationship with California is like, it's also definitely changed over the last few years, but when I first came here, it was like, oh, if you get to move here, it means you've made it. Like, you did good.
I mean,
you know?
To be fair.
Yeah, but this isn't my house. but you know, you get this like, it's everywhere you've seen in movies and you're kind of like, oh, it's amazing. Like, you're in the mix and you get to be here. And I think the more time I spent here, I was like, oh no, actually if you can come here and then leave is when you feel really great. If you're like, oh yeah, that's amazing.
See you in 2 months.
See you in a bit, yeah.
But that just goes back to what you were saying about, you strike me as being someone who's just restless.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with here is like, I've never felt at home here in LA, which is, you know, in one sense, not great, but at the same time, I always feel like I'm on holiday when I'm here.
Yeah, it's fair.
So I really enjoy being here. A lot of my closest friends are here, which is where I usually feel the best, is when I can see those people.
So as this conversation comes to a natural end, as the sun goes down on our time together, what is London to you then, if that's the closest thing to home?
London's like just where I'll want to be at some point. And it's a weird one because after traveling so much, I don't look at the future as like, I'm going to live in this one place and then I'll never move anywhere. I think it's just about like being happy. I just want to be happy. And
are you?
I feel pretty good right now. Yeah.
You had fun making this album?
Yeah, so much fun.
What's the most fun memory of making this album?
I'd say probably my favorite memory from making this, one of at least, was the day we wrote Golden. We stopped and went to have dinner, and we were all sat in the kitchen at Shangri-La. And we kind of just played it like on one guitar, and everyone kind of singing it around the table. And it just felt really good. Like, it felt so much more joyous than last time. And I think that makes sense because, like you said, the first single was a 7-minute piano ballad. So, like, it would have been weird to come out being really joyous. But
you keep going.
Oh, yeah?
Still speeding.
Yeah, just keep going.
Okay, great. And I think part of the thing with, like, the mushrooms thing for me is that I never do anything when I'm working.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even drink when I'm working. If I'm touring or anything, I don't drink really at all. And when I was in the band, it was like, to me, it felt like it was so much bigger than any of us.
Yeah.
That I kind of felt like I'm not going to be the one who fucks it up. So I was like, now is the time in my life when you probably go out and experiment and do this and you take this and you do that.
Because it's on your shoulders.
And that's what you do with your friends. And I was like, I'm not going to be the guy who messes it up. So I was like, I'm not going to do any of that stuff. Making this record felt like, I just felt so much more joyous. And I was with my friends and we were in Malibu.
Safe.
And it was like, yeah, I felt so safe. It was like, I want to take some mushrooms, I'm going to take some, like, now's the time to have fun. Like, we're in Malibu, 24. I'm also in music. I'm not like, do you know, I mean, it's like, you know, it's like I'm not...
You wouldn't be the first musician to
like
experiment in that environment.
I'm not like a politician. I don't think it's that crazy.
I don't think it's that crazy. It's definitely not crazy. What is the, do you enjoy it?
Yeah, I think my thing with drugs is like, if you're taking anything to escape but to try and hide from stuff, then you shouldn't even drink. And if you're taking anything to like have fun and be creative, then great. And I was with my friends, and making an album, you obviously get so in your head and you get so like self-conscious about everything, and you hit these bumps in the road where you're kind of thinking, is this good enough? And is it this enough? Is it that enough? There's like an afterflow of some of that stuff where sometimes you take something and then for 10 days after you're like, don't worry about it. Everything's gonna be fine. Like what are you, it's like kind of stress relieving in
Totally.
In a sense.
And that's where you're at now, I guess, in your life as you redefined success and you had fun making this album, is that you're just trying to worry less?
I think so, yeah. I think that's like been a big part of this whole thing for me. Is like, I'm just trying to go through life being a little less worried about stuff. Definitely with like working, because ultimately it'll be okay. It's like if you don't hit the top of the chart, your life doesn't change. Like, I think realizing that, it's like if that was what I was aiming at and then it didn't happen, then I'd feel so much worse. But redefining it for me has been amazing to be like, oh, but that's not the game I'm playing.
You did it.
There's a freedom with that. And
you know, you don't get to go out on arena tours with Jenny Lewis if you're trying to play the game, you know.
She's so sick.
She's the best. You don't take Casey Musgraves out before she won the Grammy if you're trying to, like, these are bold moves. It's obvious how talented Casey and Jenny are, but you would be making a far more methodical, chart-based decision, you know, taking someone else out that would fill a different kind of void, you know what I mean, in the night?
Yeah.
Whereas it just strikes me that you're making decisions based on what's making you happy.
Especially with that stuff, because Casey, I just love her. Her coming on tour I was more thinking of like, who do I want to watch every night for like 30 shows?
Yeah.
You know?
And you were so dialed in. The timing was unbelievable because that album is so special.
Yeah.
And then eventually it's like the whole world works it out.
She was booked before the album came out.
Which is nuts.
Because I just think she's so good.
Unbelievable. Her voice.
I just want to watch people who are inspiring, and you just want to be around like good stuff. I'm just a massive fan of hers. So when she came out, it was really cool for me that she was coming. And then obviously the new album came out and it was like, this is amazing. You know, same with, Leon came out last time.
And you got KP coming out in the UK.
Yeah, she's coming out this time.
Jenny Lewis coming out in the US. It's all dialed in, man. And this album is really, it's an amazing listen from beginning to end. Covers a lot of different ground, really revealing and in a really beautifully written. Some amazing lyrics in there that really kind of, I haven't heard people put into context before. Songs like Falling, and, you know, we talked about Cherry and Fine Line, the more mellow moments, but also, you know, even talking about, you know, the Canyon song where, you know, you're just putting into you know, the idea of reflecting and reminiscing on a time when it was simple. And it's just really great, man, from beginning to end.
Thank you.
It's been good to connect and talk to you for the first time. Appreciate it.
It was fun.
What are you going to do for the Christmas break? I mean, you don't start in earnest till next year, right?
I'll be doing something, sure, probably. Christmas, I go home, I go to my mum's.
Yeah. Are you ready for next year, though? I mean, do you feel charged up about the touring and everything else?
I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be... It's my favourite part.
Really? Even more than...
I mean, I've completely fallen in love with being in the studio now because of, like, the freedom that comes with it. And I think also now I'm kind of learning a different way of doing it. I think I'd get, like, chunks in the studio. I'd book, like, a studio for 2 months, and then I'd go and I'd be in there every day because I felt like I'd kind of be like, well, we've booked it, so we have to be in there. And I think at some point, you've written everything that you have to write in the moment, and you realize you're not actually living because you've just been in the studio for 3 months. So I'm kind of working out still the balance of, like, next time maybe I'll go in the studio for a couple weeks at a time while continuing to just kind of live.
Are you going to act again?
Yeah.
Anything on the horizon?
I'd like to. I think for me, it's like with the acting thing, like I never wanted to do it as like just doing it to like take a job. There was something about like the Dunkirk thing where when I heard about it, I was like, I want to be involved in that so bad. I just remember the way that it kind of hit me and where I was excited to watch it, like whether I was in it or not. I was like, I can't wait to see that. You know, if you get to make stuff that you're passionate about and you get to make something that makes you happy, then you're happy and no one can call you unsuccessful, which is great.
That's the redefinition of success, my man. Thanks for your time, bro.
Thank you.